next one who's here, I think. No? Not here? Oh, sorry. Matthew Hughes is here. He's here early, so if you turn over your submitter page, you'll see that he's was at 2:30, but he's here early.
I just wondering if there was because this is a really important topic and we're going to have seminars on it later, I just wondered if the may available for this. It's so important, but flag that now.
Sorry, I haven't turned to it yet, so page 139. Oh, the integrated asset management. Yeah, I've found this submission very interesting. So, yeah, I'm just going to make a unilateral decision to give you 10 minutes. Is that all right?
Is that all?
Well, it was going to be 5.
Thank you very much for hearing my submission. I take it that you've at least scanned these several pages I wrote.
Yep.
My name is Dr. Matthew Hughes. I'm an academic and researcher at the University of Canterbury. By training, I'm a climate change scientist, and for the last 4 years I've been investigating how the earthquakes have deformed the ground in Christchurch and damaged all the pipes under the ground. I've been working very closely with your technical staff here at the Christchurch City Council, and also very closely with the Stronger Christchurch Infrastructure Rebuild team. So I know a little bit about this general field around climate change and earthquakes and natural hazards in general, and I'm particularly concerned about the potential effects of global sea level rise and how that's going to exacerbate the relative sea level rise that's already occurred in Christchurch, and I'll talk about this in a minute, how it may impact into the future. There's quite a bit of detail in my submission. Also, I provide references in there to the work I've contributed to and the publications we've been working on around these issues. I won't go into most of those in any detail, but there are 2 things I wish to reiterate or emphasise from my submission. The first one is the proposed asset management information system. So this is the information technology that is proposed to manage the city's infrastructure. There's pipes under the ground, roads, and other things like that. As I say in my submission, this isn't just a data repository for normal day-to-day operations within the council and doing the financials and costs of day-to-day management and those sorts of things. This is potentially a fascinating and valuable research tool that we in the research community can collaborate with your technocrats with to do detailed spatial and temporal modelling of the interdependencies and vulnerabilities of the city's infrastructure. We at the university already have access to some of your data sets. We've got agreements with the council to access those. The current system is extremely unwieldy, and we hope to make certain improvements around that. I think in the infrastructure strategy that you put out, you had a particular section on this. I gather that reflects the importance that you place upon this. I want to let you know, and also I will be speaking to your staff around this as well, that we in the research community are very keen to collaborate with the development of the system, at least from a perspective of how the information in there may interface with the wider research community. So communities will benefit from such an integrated system, simply because we hope to make any understandings of interdependencies between systems, for example, the electricity system and the pressurised pumped water supply. Those vulnerabilities and interdependencies, the more we can realistically understand how they may be knocked out in future earthquakes and tsunami and future flood events and those sorts of things. Hopefully that'll provide some more resilience to the city system going forward, or at least we will be able to inform managers and decision makers the best we can about the realities around these things. It's an IT thing. It has a potential to blow out and be insanely expensive. I think we all can understand that around IT systems. That's completely unnecessary. I'm part of a team at the University of Canterbury, we're based there, that recently was awarded $22 million for a 5-year program to understand the impacts of earthquakes in New Zealand, to make New Zealand a safer place to protect our buildings and communities. Part of that is around data and computing systems, and I am the lead for the data program within this research program, and we're very keen on having some cut-through around delivering information and technology systems to understand data. So there's a lot of waste that can occur with IT projects. We're going to try and cut through that as much as possible. And I'd like to say to you today that we'd be very open to having discussions about how we can integrate some of the information and data you'll be managing into this wider program, and we can feed back into it.
Great.
The second thing I need to talk about is sea level rise. The city's dropped through earthquake, through liquefaction and subsidence. I won't go into the details of that here. Around the world, coastal communities are facing deep issues with relative sea level rise. Historically, and up until now, these issues have occurred in the absence of sea level, what we call climatic global sea level rise, because in many coastal communities and landscapes, the ground naturally subsides in sandy and silty places by rivers around the world. Just the weight of the sediments, they sort of compress themselves, and landscapes naturally sink in these sorts of environments. Rivers, through flooding and depositing sediment in these areas, naturally replenish the ground surface. And so when people sensibly build stop banks and flood protection measures, they actually stop the sediment going into those landscapes as well. This can actually enhance the subsidence going on. Can't really criticise that because it's also stopping the floodwaters getting in most of the time. The other things that cause landscapes to subside on coasts is people extracting groundwater and oil and gas. And so that's an anthropogenic, human-caused subsidence that enhances the vulnerability to flooding and coastal flooding to these areas. We now know through the Canterbury earthquake sequence that earthquakes also cause landscape subsidence. So this is a natural process, and those areas where we build cities on these areas are vulnerable to increased flooding and sea level risks. So if the ground drops, that means the high tide is going to penetrate further inland, and that's what we call relative sea level rise. So that's what we've seen in Christchurch. The plant communities around the estuary are telling us this. We have quantitative data around this, and this is well recognised and being addressed by all the relevant people in Christchurch. My concern is looking ahead within the time frames of the lifetimes of the new pipes and other pump stations going into the ground, is that the communities living on the coastal landscapes might not be viable within the time frames of the lifetimes of the infrastructure itself. We don't have any information around this, I have to say. This is largely conjecture. We play the movie in our head. The information we have suggests that this is going to be the case. But I am part of a wider team of people who are seeking money from funding agencies to research this in depth. We're going to be monitoring the saltiness and the levels of the groundwater under the city over time. We're going to be integrating that with detailed computer modelling of how dunes and other landscapes are going to change through time, and try and understand how that's going to influence the pipes under the ground. I won't talk any more about that here because I understand through Christy Williams at ECAN that we're going to be holding a specific workshop with you people along with the ECAN commissioners, and I believe that's going to be in early June. And so we'll have a couple of hours to unpack these issues in more detail, and where we can discuss the strategies and approaches we're going to have to try and quantify this situation. I will say, though, that a lot of these issues at the moment are largely speculation. And as I say, there's a frustrating convergence of certainties around certain things and complete absence of information around others. So you guys are in the position of having to make decisions in an information vacuum, and by the time we have any scientific certainty about a lot of the things I'm talking about, your decisions around infrastructure maintenance and development will have already been made, and we'll have to live with the consequences of that. So let's talk about this in more detail at another time. Thank you very much for giving me 10 minutes. But I guess we've got a minute and a half left if anyone has any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. David, then Phil. We probably won't have time beyond that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
and we are going to have it. You're going to come to that session, aren't you?
I'll be there.
Yeah, right.
Appreciate the depth of work you're involved with. My concern really, I suppose, and you've used a couple of words here, around here, subjective, I can't remember what the other one was.
Conjecture.
Conjecture, and some things are quite subjective. My concern really, I suppose, is around the science, that we need to have actually some definition of surety around it, because we have a whole community that are getting very nervous, very upset, very whole hope of other words, about their tenure, their future in their community. When we are discussing things such as this that have a high degree of long-term effect on our communities, I would really be much more confident if we had a lot more certainty around these outcomes. And to be putting this sort of information out now, that's an issue for me.
Yeah, there was.
It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and I think it's really...
Excuse me, earlier on I said that I was going to try and share questions around because it was such a, narrow window. But I think David's right to raise the issue, because every time we've had people come and make submissions on different components of how the city's planning around Brighton, which is the coastal community, but I'm talking right to the spit of South Shore and right the way up to the Waimakariri River. There are huge tensions around the fact that people think they're going to be forced into a position of, and they use the phrase managed retreat, which is a phrase that Tonkin and Taylor used in one of their reports, when in fact we've got to start talking the language of adaptation, of living with our natural environment, but also learning to understand the science. And what I took from your submission is that there is valuable science that the University of Canterbury is very, very willing and open to share with the people of Christchurch as we develop our natural hazard strategy. And all David was saying was that there are so many uncertainties out there and people fearful of the impact that it will have on their homes. I think he was just asking for that to be taken into account when communications occur. And I think that's fair enough.
I completely agree with everything you say. Don't shoot the messenger, though.
No. And, absolutely not.
And so we in the scientific community, there's a well-developed body of research and understanding now about science communication and conveying uncertainty. But I'm a natural hazards scientist fundamentally. I see this from a hazards perspective. Yeah. So there's a wealth of information of approaching this particular climate issue from a natural hazards perspective, just like we do with liquefaction and earthquakes in general and other natural hazards like that. We do not want to make people scared or unduly worried. Conversely, the last thing we want to do is have people being complacent.
Yes.
And to have a business as usual approach to market forces and regulation, which puts people at risk. Bexley.
Yeah.
So we can unpack these issues at another time, but I completely understand your concerns. I also understand how messaging can influence insurance and markets around certain things. But again, we are very cognizant of this, and certainly I am. But that cannot be an excuse for not putting the information out there to the ordinary people. No,
that's right. And how we message that and work with our communities, because there's a lot of local knowledge. I remember the first Bexley meeting that we did since you used Bexley after the September earthquake, the number of older people who said it should never have been built. They knew more than the developers did.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And as a final message, this is not about pointy-headed ivory tower types dictating information and expecting the plebs to respond. That's not how we work anymore. It used to be like that. I can make a couple of mentions about the honest broker of policy alternatives. It's the philosophical, scientific approach we try to have in socially controversial issues. And so we are the community as well. I pay taxes and rates.
Yep. I
have a political opinion about certain things. But what that What that means is that we have to acknowledge our own biases and imperatives and the things that drive us, all of us, and sit around the table and thrash the information out.
Yep.
And empower communities. This isn't about forcing people off their land or managed retreat. It's about getting people to at least be aware of the universal choices which they now have. And if I can do anything around increasing people's choices that they have, then that's why I'm here.
Well, your comments have justified the choice that I made, but I also understand that Phil has a question too, so I'll just let Phil ask the final question.
Thank you, and that is very helpful, what your comments just now as well, Matthew. And look, I'm impressed that it's a collaborative type scientific research that's being done with other disciplines. And I heard your presentation that Chrissy Williams organised for the HERP one. But I just wondered, in terms of I wonder if you should answer this now, or whether we should wait till we have the further presentation. But it's what's been raised at different times by submitters is, I guess it's the aspect of the sand dunes. And my question really is, how can we check out the importance of those in relation to future prevention, not only of sea level rise, but say particularly tsunami. Now, I'm not sure if you, among the team of presenters, whether you're, I'm impressed with your qualifications, you're a natural hazards scientist, but so no, my question really is, should you answer that now, or should we wait for the
Let's unpack those issues at our workshop.
Very happy to.
I'm not an expert in specifically geomorphology, but my colleagues are.
Yep.
And so we can unpack those things then.
Look, that's excellent, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That
Thank
very,
you all.
very helpful submission. Thank you. Nick Harwood.